Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast / Wednesday night Bible study that we're trying to do now. We're trying to combine the two so that you guys have some good spiritual food going on throughout the week, so that you're not just left alone. Thanksgiving is coming up. I know everybody's somewhat excited for it, maybe. Oh, the year 2020. We will bid thee farewell. Man, this year has just been crazy, hasn't it? You know, I feel like if you've been deprived enough never to watch the movie Holes, I'm so sorry. I watched that growing up all the time, and I loved that movie. And the warden in the story was recounting a time when her grandfather would make her dig holes in and around Camp Green Lake to look for this treasure that some robber in the Old West, dug into the ground and put there. Anyways, they're looking for this treasure, and this little girl, she's 8 years old. She's digging, probably on Christmas. And she says to her grandpa, "I'm tired of this, Grandpa." And the grandpa says, "That's too bad. You keep digging." Oh, that's what 2020 feels like. "I'm tired of this, Grandpa. Too bad." Anyways, so we are continuing our study in the Beatitudes. And we are on Matthew 5:5. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Okay, now, at least where I'm from in Tennessee, I'm not from there, I'm from here, but anyways, as soon as you mention, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth, they completely disregard the first part, they only focus on the second part. Everyone loses their minds over the second part, it seems like. But that's not what we're going to do today. We will get to the second part. We'll be able to pick it apart and look at it and stuff like that. But let's progress through this beatitude. Now, remember, when we started looking at the Beatitudes, we wanted to get into our mindset that Jesus is talking about a hypothetical person on their spiritual journey. And they're going through these stages of spirituality, as I called them. And, with the first one, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. We talked about how the individual has seen their complete and utter spiritual bankruptcy, that they are not only sinners. We get that down all the time, sure. But they are not only sinners, they are unrighteous, Romans 3:10. They are unholy. They are poor in spirit. And really quick, let me mention this. It's very, very important to take the Beatitudes in light of Jesus's main enemies of his ministry at the time. And who were the main enemies of Jesus at the time? They were the Pharisees. They were the Sadducees, the religious elite of the day, who believed themselves to be righteous in their own eyes and treated others with contempt. And so when we're looking at each and every one of these, we should see the opposite of these being displayed in the Pharisees, because that's exactly what's going on. The opposite of poor in spirit is not, you don't feel like you can do anything. The opposite of poor in spirit is I can make myself righteous. The opposite is I'm a sinner, sure, but I can do things to make that, make my good outweigh my bad, and things like that. I can make myself holy. And of course, they were guilty of that as well. And then we went on, blessed are those who mourn. Well, the opposite of that, the Pharisees, the religious elite, they did not mourn over their sin. Because they really did believe that if I make myself righteous, I'll make myself pleasing to God, and therefore my good outweighing my bad, I have nothing to worry about. I'm not sorry for my sin because I can make it all better. And so we reach Matthew chapter 5, verse 5. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Now, what does that word meek mean? Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Now, when I was going through preaching school, one way that I heard it was that meek is having power, but refusing to use it. It's like a horse that has been, broken. The horse has power, but refuses to use it. That's a good way to think about it. Let me give you what BDAG says on it. The Greek word behind it is praus, and BDAG says they define this word as not being overly impressed by one's own self-importance. And it can be translated as gentle, humble, considerate, or meek. And really the simplest way to understand what meek is humility, is being humble. The person here is humble. They've seen that they are sinners. They're unrighteous. They're unholy. They're at a woe is me kind of stage. And after that, they shed tears. They're in pieces over their sin, that they have rebelled against God, and they have hurt him. They have gone against him. They see their own filthiness. I know we don't like to use terms like that, but that's the truth. And so now they get to this point where they can't be anything but humble now. Why? What is the opposite of being meek? What is the opposite of being humble? Well, it's being prideful. And this person going through the stages of spirituality, they realize they have nothing to be proud about. They can't be prideful. They don't have any pride. It's not a part of them anymore because they've seen the reality. They've measured themselves up and against God appropriately. And they see that they woefully fall short. Like Isaiah did in Isaiah chapter 6, when he saw God sitting on the throne, and he said, what? Woe is me, I'm undone. I'm a man of unclean lips. I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips. When he's measuring himself up and against God, the distance in holiness and righteousness and goodness that is between him and God is just astronomical. And so it leaves you with no hope in yourself to produce something pleasing to God. Not in a saving fashion, at least. We all understand unrighteous people can do righteous things. Yeah, but that's not what we're talking about right now. So there's no pride left in them. But like I said before, taking this in light of the Pharisees, well, the Pharisees had pride. They had tons of pride. This was impossible for the individual who's going through this, but it was very possible for the Pharisees to have this kind of spiritual pride. I mean, this is why we're in Matthew 5. But go over, maybe it's one page in your Bible, maybe it's two, maybe it's not even one. Matthew chapter 6, he's still in the middle of the Sermon on the Mount. And he says this in Matthew 6:1. Beware of practicing your righteousness before other people. Sorry, had an alarm. Beware of practicing your righteousness before other people in order to be seen by them. For then you will have no reward from your Father who is in heaven. Why is he concerned with practicing your righteousness? Because it's in a spiritually prideful way. The Pharisees, the religious elite. It doesn't end there. Look at verse 15. Actually, you know what? Look at verse 5 really quick. And when you pray this, you must not be like the hypocrites, for they love to stand and pray in the synagogues and at the street corners, that they may be seen by others. They like the trappings of religiosity, and they like the fact that they can make themselves righteous, and they have accomplished this, and now they're flaunting it before everyone. They have pride, and don't you doubt it for a second. They have it. And they want to show you it. Look at verse 15. 16. And when you fast, do not look gloomy like the hypocrites, for they disfigure their faces, that their fasting may be seen by others. They want you to see their righteousness. They want you to see what they're doing. There's a really, really good one. I should have marked this in my Bible, actually. In Luke 18, verses 11 through 12, you see the same thing here. You see the same thing where the Pharisee, he wants to display his righteousness because he genuinely believes that he has it in the first place. So in verse 11, the Pharisee standing by himself, this is during the parable of the Pharisee and the tax collector. The Pharisee standing by himself prayed thus, God, I thank you that I'm not like other men, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I give tithes of all I get. He has a righteous pride problem. These were the main enemies of Jesus in his ministry. And a lot of what Jesus is saying in his ministry needs to be taken in light of who his enemies are. It's not every time. It's not every parable. It's not every saying. But it's in a bunch of them. It's certainly in a bunch of them. Certainly in Matthew 23, verses 5 through 7, and it says this. They do all their deeds, Jesus talking about the Pharisees. They do all their deeds to be seen by others, for they make their phylacteries broad and their fringes long, and they love the place of honor at feast and the best seats in the synagogue and greetings in the marketplaces and being called rabbi by others. You don't do that stuff if you're broken in spirit, if you're poor in spirit, if you're mourning over your sin, and if you were humble, if you were meek. They weren't. They were not humble. They were not meek. These are not the actions of those who understand their true spiritual state. They don't. They would have shook in not only fear, but anger at Paul at daring to write something like Romans 3:10. None is righteous, no, not one. And Romans 3:23, all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. They would have hated to hear it. They would have hated it. But that's what happens when you think you can make yourself righteous. Look, this isn't a first century problem either. This is a now century problem. This has always been a problem. This will always be a problem. Spiritual pride, haughtiness. And it's something we must fight. We have to fight it. But now we get on to the other part of the verse. These people who are meek, they become meek because they've realized their spiritual circumstance. And they realize exactly what is wrong with their relationship with God. They shed tears over it. They're mourning. They're sorrowful. They become humble, lowly in spirit. What do they get? Because the poor in spirit, they're comprised of the kingdom of heaven. Those who mourn are going to be comforted by God. What do the meek get? Now here's where it gets fun. For they shall inherit the earth. Okay. So as soon as we get into this, already tons of questions are coming up and tons of divisions and stuff like that have been done in the brotherhood over this. I actually don't think any congregation has ever split over this, but at least divisions in distinctions wise. Distinctions have been made, and some people outright condemn you if you believe this. But here's the truth before we get into this. This is an issue that should not divide us. This is not a hill to die on. This is not a salvific matter at all. One that pertains to your salvation. If you believe it, if you don't believe it, it's not. There are plenty of issues that should, but this isn't one of them. This is not the triune nature of God that we're talking about here. This is not the deity of Christ. This is not justification. This is not the atonement. This is about eschatological things of the end times. And no one can be openly dogmatic on many end times things because our knowledge on end times things are just so limited. Now, you can be dogmatic on certain end times things. There are certain end times things that it's like, oh, wow, that reeks of heresy. But this isn't one of them. What does it mean? What am I getting at? What does it mean for them that they shall inherit the earth? Now, first of all, imagine being a Jewish follower, a disciple of Jesus. They're hearing this. They are hearing this first time. They don't have any other New Testament revelation at all. This is all they know. Now, the Jewish person who's following Jesus, they would have heard this, inherit the earth. Well, that means the land of Israel. That means that God is going to kick the Romans out. That means God is going to do this and for us, and that wasn't the case. It wasn't. How do we know that? Well, AD 70 still happened. Jerusalem was destroyed in 70 AD by the Romans. When we're talking about inherit the earth, we're talking about inheriting it in the same way that Noah did. What happened with Noah during the flood? All the wicked were washed away. They were taken away. And it was Noah and his family who were left on the earth. We're to take it like that. I think that is the plain and simple reading of the text. The entire story of the Bible, has been all about getting back to that Edenic state. When in Eden, everything was perfect, the earth had not fallen yet, man had not fallen yet, there was no death, there was no disease or anything like that, and we were with God. We were in communion with God. This was where we were made to be, and it was perfect. We were with God. And by default, that is heaven. Wherever God is, that's heaven. And the entire singular story of the Bible, because it's all one story, the entire singular story of the Bible is all about getting man back together with God again. And so things like the new heavens, new earth idea comes out of this. New heavens, new earth. I know that you've talked about it. You've heard about it before. Isaiah has talked about it. Revelation talks about it in specific terms where it mentions new heavens and new earth. But sometimes people, and we'll get into it here in a second, why it's the view that we're only going to heaven and there is no new heavens, new earth is actually new. It's not ancient, it's not old, it's new. And whenever new teaching comes around in the church, have to be careful with that. But anyways, there's the idea that we're just going to go to heaven and be protoplasmic spirits just kind of floating around forever. How do you deal with this verse? For they shall inherit the earth. How do you deal with that? Let's go into what this text would have meant to the early readers of it, the early readers of the text. Did they believe in a new heavens, new earth view where God was going to recreate, destroy the old earth, destroy the old heavens, and make a new heavens and a new earth where God and man dwelled together forever? Let's get into that. I have some good stuff for you. If you're a fan of church history, which I hope that you are, this will be interesting to you. Irenaeus. Now, when we're looking at early church history, we're not quoting it as in Scripture. We're using it as a reference point. We're using it as support of, well, let's get into their mindset. What would they have thought about this text? And since Irenaeus, as we'll find out here in a second, is closer to the writing of this text than we are, it's good to kind of understand what he and people around him thought about it. So Irenaeus, he lived from around 130 AD to 200 AD. That's early. Now this guy would have learned under Polycarp. It was said that he learned under Polycarp. And Polycarp was taught by the Apostle John. The Apostle John. And John, the apostle of love. So Irenaeus would have been spiritually his spiritual grandson, which is kind of cool to think. It's awesome to see biblical history move on into the rest of history like that, where you had people that knew the prophets, people that knew the apostles. Can you imagine? That would just be so cool to actually know these guys. And these people did. And so Irenaeus, he says this: neither is the substance nor the essence of the creation annihilated, for faithful and true is he who established it. But from the world, the form of the world passes away. 1 Corinthians 7:31. That is, those things among which transgression has occurred, because man has grown old in them. But when this present form of things passes away, and man has been renewed and flourishes in an incorruptible state, so as to preclude the possibility of becoming old, won't that be great? Then there will be the new heavens and the new earth, in which the new man will remain, continually enjoying new communion with God. That's what the early church would have believed. How about another one? I won't just give you one and call it good. Origen in 185 to 254 AD. Still very, very early. Still way closer to the writing of Matthew and the closing of the canon than we are. He said, if the form of the world passes away, it is by no means annihilation or destruction, their material substance, that is shown to take place, but a kind of change of quality and a transformation of appearance. So he's saying that, as some people believe today, that the earth will just be destroyed and that will be it, and we go to heaven. But that's not only not what the Bible says, but that's not what the early church would have believed. They believed that when it says new heavens, new earth, God meant it. When in 2 Peter, just turn there really quick. In 2 Peter chapter 3, verse, let's start at verse 11. It's very, very clear. Since all these things are thus to be dissolved, what sort of people ought you to be in lives of holiness and godliness, waiting for the hastening the coming of the day of God, because of which the heavens will be set on fire and dissolved, and the heavenly bodies will melt as they burn. And some people just stop right there. Well, that's the end. That's what's going to happen. And they stop. There's still another verse right after that. But according to this promise, verse 13, we are waiting for new heavens and a new earth in which righteousness dwells. And some people will say, well, that's metaphoric there. He's being poetic there. There was no sign of transition into poetical form at all. And if that's poetic, then you have to take the previous verse to be poetic too. That's not being consistent. It's not. So this kind of theme, and I'm not trying to make this a class about new heavens, new earth, and what you believe, because it's not. We could do that in an entirely different class sometime if we like, out of love, not out of bashing each other over the head, as it should be. But anyways, this is what the early church believed. They didn't believe that the earth was going to be destroyed and that's it. It was going to be destroyed, and then the new heavens and the new earth, one that was not corrupted by the fall, would be created. God and man would dwell together again. But some people, even though I quoted from people in the early church, well, that's not enough. Okay, I came prepared. What saith the Brotherhood? What does the Brotherhood say on this? It's almost like we believe that this teaching has never been in the Brotherhood. And that's just not true. It's not. This is a lectureship book where they were, in 1978, they were going over premillennialism, true or false. And of course, premillennialism, not true. But there's a section in this where, what's his name? Yeah, Charles Coyle, during this lectureship, he was assigned the topic, the new heavens and the new earth. And it's funny because even in his denunciation of premillennialism, which of course is not true, he still affirmed the new heavens and the new earth, even in the Brotherhood. Let me read you a few quotes. Since the premillennial theory holds that Christ will come again and reign on this earth, it is obviously false. Why is it false? When he comes again, this earth will burn up. A new one will be created. He cannot reign over an old earth that is gone, and their theory does not envision a reign over one that is new. So in order to disprove the premillennial idea that Christ is going to come back and reign for 1,000 years on this earth, he says, no. This earth is going to be destroyed. It can't happen. It doesn't. Because when he comes again, he's going to set up a new creation, a new earth, a new heaven. Let me continue. Where he continues through his discourse here. Is the new heavens and new earth to be identified with the holy city let down out of heaven? Is this the future dwelling place of the redeemed where God will dwell with man? This seems to be the meaning and intent of the passage. You see how you don't have to pendulum swing? You see how you can affirm that, premillennialism and the 1,000-year reign of Christ on earth, that's not a true thing, but you don't have to gut out all the rest. That's called being unbalanced. And this guy, Brother Coyle, in the Church of Christ, he understands. So let me leave it off with this. There is other evidence that the new heavens and the new earth are intended to describe the future dwelling place of the redeemed. For example, The old heavens and earth are obviously the dwelling place of humanity. It would not be illogical or contrary to reason or evidence to suppose that the new heavens and new earth would be so used in the future. This is brotherhood stuff. It's not wrong to believe this. It's biblical stuff. Now, I'm not going to come down on you and bash you over the head and say, you must believe what I believe. No. If you want to believe that we're going to go straight to heaven, okay. Yeah, as a good brother of mine says, when we have our conversations, we weren't talking about new heavens and new earth, but we were talking about a different subject. And he said, and you can disagree with me and everything like that, and we're still Christians. We're still brothers. That kind of level of maturity and unity in the body of Christ is exactly what we need, because this is not an issue that determines salvation. It's not. So you can believe that we're going to go straight to heaven, and that's it. Okay. Because at the end of the day, whatever's going to happen in terms of that, God knows, and it's going to happen regardless. So if that's what happens, okay. And if the new heavens and new earth gets created, okay. I've got another brotherhood quote for you, by the way. I'm not moving on from that just yet. Still in the category of looking at brotherhood stuff, Church of Christ stuff. How about J.W. McGarvey? That's a big one. That's a big one in the brotherhood. At least the way I've understood brotherhood material. He was commenting on this verse, our verse in the Beatitudes, Matthew 5:5, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. And he says this, the meek shall inherit it in two ways. Number one, they shall enjoy it more fully while in it. True. Number two, they shall finally, as a part of the triumphant church, possess it and enjoy it. Doubtless, there is also here a reference to complete possession to be fulfilled in the new earth. That's J.W. McGarvey. In the next commentary on verse 6 that we'll get into next week, he even makes the same remark again about the new creation. This is not something that's weird. This is not something that's out of orthodoxy in a way. This is not something that's uncommon to Christian belief for all of church history. This is something that's very, very normal. And I think it is a pendulum swing thing. We're afraid of something. Possibly we're afraid of what the Jehovah's Witnesses believe. And so we swing past and go all the way over to the other side. They believe in a renovated earth. It will be renewed. And the Bible teaches that the creation will be destroyed. It will not be renewed. It'll be created anew, a new heaven, a new earth, not a renewed earth. So that's probably why we have such an aversion to it. But we should be able to talk about this stuff as brothers and sisters in Christ. We should be able to have logical, non-emotionally charged discourse on this and be just fine. It should not be something that we're tiptoeing around. It's what the Bible teaches, so let's teach what the Bible teaches, right? And once again, this is not a class on new heavens, new earth, okay? We're doing the Beatitudes right now. But I wanted to cover just a few verses about this. 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 31. And Paul is talking about the lives that we have, that we're called to live in, and then he talks about being unmarried and stuff like that. Well, in the context of that, he makes this little offhand statement really quick. It's very quick. Verse 30, and to those who mourn, as though they were not mourning, and those who rejoice as though they were not rejoicing, and those who buy as though they had no goods, verse 31, and those who deal with the world as though they had no dealings with it. Why, Paul? For the present form of this world is passing away. So, when we're looking at this, why in the world did he say present form of this world, or current form of this world? Why didn't he just say the world is passing away? He could have done that. He could have done that. But he said the present form of this world is passing away. The Greek word there is schema, or schema. It means present form. If he wanted to just say form of this world, not present form, he had another Greek word he could have used. This is the same kind of logical discourse that we use for immersion versus sprinkling, and there were different Greek words that could have been used. He could have used the word morphe in Philippians chapter 2 when it's talking about Jesus being in very form God. Morphe. He was God in his form. He had another word he could have used, but he used schema, meaning present form. Why use that word, present form, if everything's just going to be destroyed? Unless he was denoting the fact that the present form of this world is going to be destroyed, but we look forward to the next form, the new heavens, the new earth, the uncorruptible creation. Romans 8. A consistent reading of Romans 8 will tell you that. Not one that butchers it. Like I said, we're not going to get into it here. But this is the hope that we have for all those who are on these steps of spirituality. We have this hope that blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Question: is God going to take away his promise to you? Is he going to take away the promise he made to his people? The new heavens and the new earth, where God and man dwell together forever, which by itself means heaven. I don't think he will. If the earth is going to be destroyed and then not created anew for spiritual habitation forever in righteousness, then this verse doesn't make any sense. It doesn't. So that's where we're going to end it today. I wish we had a class, not here, where we could have discussion and questions and stuff like that. If you have any questions about this, message me on Facebook Messenger. You have my, any questions you have, I'm more than happy to answer, and we will look at the Bible together. And once again, this is not something we should be dividing over. This is not something we should be hateful. I mean hateful over, as I've seen. This is not one of those things. So let the text be what it is and move on. And next time, we're going to be talking about Matthew chapter 5, verse 6, which is, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. That's going to be fun, as we'll talk about justification. But until that time, I hope that your walk with Jesus is going well. I hope that your prayers are being answered. I hope that people are praying for you and you are praying for other people. And if I can help out in any way, if I can answer any spiritual question at all, or the elders here, reach out to us. Reach out to us, and we're more than happy to be there for you. Like I say every time, please share the video and like it, and we will see you next time, okay? Take care. Happy Thanksgiving, by the way, so have a good one.